Ladies and gentlemen, our workshop is scheduled to begin at 4 o'clock. I am going to postpone for just a few moments because Commissioner Barnes has let us know that he's running just a few minutes late. So if I beg your indulgence, and we're just going to wait a few moments to start because we can't move forward without another commissioner being here. Thank you.
But we don't know by phone. Ask. I'll
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to welcome you to this special workshop this afternoon of the Lynn Haven City Commission. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, the purpose, somebody said no. Okay, I'll go a little louder. I can get that singing voice going here, but I was trying not to. Just wanted to welcome you all. This is a single issue workshop today for the purpose of our discussion of the interviews we conducted at the last meeting for the position of city manager. For those of you who may be joining us late in the process, I would like to just say that we are all very pleased as a commission with our outgoing city manager. He is going to be taking the position of assistant county manager. So I just wanted you to know that he is leaving, you know, we're not happy that he's leaving, but he's leaving in a happy stead. So I didn't want you to think we were pushing him aside. And we have completed our interviews. We narrowed the candidates. We had over 40 applications to 7. And then at our last commission meeting, many of you were here. We interviewed those 7 individually as commission members in separate rooms. We all had a chance to speak with them as individuals, not as a body. And then we met here in the room, and we were able to ask them additional questions, and the public also had the opportunity to ask those questions. So that's where we are today. And I just wanted to put forth this process to my fellow commissioners and see if this would be acceptable to them as a way of moving forward today. Did I just pass those? Yeah, here they are. First of all, we have narrowed to the 7 candidates, as I said, and so I'm proposing that, first of all, to get started, and one more cleaning up of business. Commissioner Dan Russell is on his way. He will be here for the commission meeting, correct?
telephone.
Through telephone. Oh, okay. He will not be present at the commission meeting either, but by telephone, and he may be joining us during the workshop. So he's had a family vacation that was planned for quite some time, I think maybe even before he became commissioner, and so that's why he's not here today. I just didn't want you to think there was an empty chair sitting there. So to continue with the process, And one other item about Commissioner Russell, he did submit his thoughts about the the commission decision today by email, which the city manager will be sharing with the rest of the commission. He will not be able to vote because he's not here, but he is able to participate and offer his input. So that's where we are. At this point, I have slips of paper, and I'm going to pass them to each member of the commission and myself. And what we're asking is that each commissioner would just write the top choice out of the interviewees that we interviewed before. And then at the bottom of this slip, there is a place to initial or sign your name so that if anyone in the public would like to know how each commissioner voted or put forth the first name, that you would be able to do that through public records. In other words, it would be transparent. So it's not just an anonymous slip of paper. So if that's agreeable with everyone, is that agreeable as a way of getting started? If we all list the same person, we might be in a very short workshop. If we have 4 different names, we might proceed in a different way. So everybody's ready. And then we will pass these to the attorney, if you would do that, Mr. Jackson. And while the attorney is reviewing the names, I would like to just comment and give the other commissioners the opportunity as well to say what a great pool of candidates that we had to look at for the position of city manager. I had a difficult decision, especially when I got down to 2 or 3. And, and I'm sure they did as well. So at this point, before Mr. Jackson reveals what he finds out, would anyone else like to make any comments about the process or anything that you engaged in? Okay. Commissioner Barnes said he said enough last week, if that...
All right, Mayor, we have 3 votes for Michael White and 1 for Mr. Brian Davis.
Okay. So we have 3 votes for Michael White and 1 vote for Brian Davis. And so at this point, because there is a difference, would anyone like to discuss or say anything that you'd like to say about your candidate that you've chosen?
I will.
Go ahead.
I selected Brian Davis because he's local. I know Mr. Davis from business dealings. He owns the Ledger. The man has more integrity in one finger than most 10 people that I know. And he knows how to deal with people. And he deals with them in a very kind way. And I've heard people say, well, he's, not too hard. Well, the thing about Mr. Davis, I've seen him mad. He doesn't get mad very often, and it's not a pretty sight. So he can be pushed, But, and that's why I voted for him, because I think the city is in a state where we have unhappy employees. I think we need a city manager, not to say that you weren't, we need a city manager that's going to come in and deal with each and every employee so that we can get everybody happy again and on the same, get everybody on the same bus, so to speak.
Okay.
So that's my main thing. The other thing, too, that I like about Brian is he's not one of the good old boys. He's not anybody that's goes out every Thursday night with the good old boys. And he's very, very ethical. And that was the main reason that I voted for him.
And Mayor, if I can clarify something, I misspoke when I said votes.
Yes, I know.
Technically, it's not votes, it's their top selection.
Yes,
3.
we've not entered into a voting process
No,
until
there's
the
no
commission
voting.
meeting. Yes, absolutely. Anyone else?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'll use the opportunity. I like Mr. Davis. I really appreciate the work that he does in the Ledger, and I appreciate the experience that he has, and I agree he's a very humble man. I agree that he's a very, very, very intelligent man. I think the only thing that put Mr. White over the top for me, I had Mr. White, don't mind saying, also had Mr. Newhouse. But what I really liked about Mr. White is the fact, yes, he is local. He has local relationships, and I think relationships are very important He has relationships not only with the county, but others and the other municipalities, and I think those relationships will come in handy for the city of Lynn Haven. But two key things during the interview that really highlighted for me, and I appreciate Commissioner Tender mentioning employees, was his respect for the employees. He was an individual that at Gulf Coast Community College, at the co-op, he came up through the ranks before he had other positions before he was CEO. And I think that speaks very highly of an individual, and I think that someone that does that can relate to employees a whole lot better. But during the interview, he spoke about employees quite a bit, and I liked that. And the other side of that is he spoke a whole lot about customer service and safety, but more so about customer service. And I think as a municipality, we provide services, and as a service provider, we have to have really high customer service standards. And I think Mr. White will do a good job in meeting those expectations of our residents.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
I appreciate that. Commissioner Bonds?
Yeah, my selection of Michael White is pretty much the same. He is local. He has ran a business, CEO. But the thing that got me with Mr. White is the fact that he cares about employees. I agree with you. We do have some unhappy employees. The worst that I've seen in the 21 and a half years that I've been here. And our greatest asset are our employees. And so Mr. White has a lot of customer service background. He cares about his employees. When I was speaking with him one-on-one, he was passionate about his employees, and that carries a lot of weight with me. And so he's definitely my number one choice.
Thank you. And I would just add, as I was narrowing down my selection, I would concur with everything that Commissioner Tender said about Brian Davis. Brian Davis was, I've vacillated between my two choices. He was my second choice. I'll just be very honest about that. And I've had the two resumes in front of me. I've been traveling some this week and going through them and trying to hash back through the interviews. And what makes it even more difficult is that I've known Brian Davis personally, and so I know his integrity and I know his level of commitment to the people that he works with and is with on a daily basis. As I was going through the strengths of what, as mayor, I was thinking back to those things 2 years ago that I know we're a commission, and we work as a commission, and it takes at least 3 of us to concur to move anything forward. But I also know that coming in 2 years ago, I had a list on an agenda that I promised to the people of Lynn Haven if I were elected, and I've tried very carefully to stay with that list. And in looking at it, on Mr. White's resume, over and over and over, the word that stuck in my brain was water. Over and over and over, water, working with sewer systems, working with water, working with a $165 million budget. And he had a large staff where he was at, but being able to, water is Lynn Haven's biggest problem right now. Our utilities department and our water, we have to get a handle on that. We have residents that are in one house that they have a septic tank, and in the house next door to them, they're hooked to city water, and then 2 more houses on septic and another on, and we have, every time it rains, 3 days ago, I had a call from Sean, who lives at 1600 Vermont, who has to move his family out of his house every time we have a heavy rain. Not a tropical storm, but a heavy rain. And he's not the only one. And when I'm looking at expertise, over and over, my expertise, in addition to employees and other various experiences, business owner that Mr. Davis had to offer, I see Mr. Davis's strength in technology. And I hope that at some point, I would love to see Lynn Haven's technology take off in a much bigger way, in a much bigger direction. Not that our technicians now are not doing a good job, but Lynn Haven is far behind, far behind in technology as well. And so I would hope, I can't, of course, promise anything, but if Mr. Davis should not be the choice today, I would hope that there would be a place in Lynn Haven in the future in technology. for his expertise, because I know no one in this town that has more as teacher and as an operating business person. But back to my choice of Mr. White, I just wanted to comment again. He's managed contracts with all of the items that I was listing, with sewer, with water, and Lynn Haven's going to have some additions. We're going to have another well. We're going to have additions to our sewer. We've got to work with federal agencies. We've got to work with Bay County agencies. We've got to work with other state agencies to find a way to solve our coastal flooding problem. We cannot keep telling people, I'm sorry, you have to live with this because we live on a coastal flooding plain, and every time the tide rises, this is going to be your quality of life. That cannot be our answer. And so in my interview and in my looking at his experience, and not that that's the only thing that he would be dealing with if we chose Mr. White, but that's why, as mayor, this is the one issue, this paving, this infrastructure, and this water, that I feel that I've not yet gotten to the point that I could say to residents, yes, I've been able to help move this commission forward. I've been able to promise and to get this done with grants and with federal money and with state money. It isn't done yet, and our residents deserve that. So if we were to choose him today, I'm putting my confidence in him that he will move this forward with our interview. So that's where I'm at. Anybody else? I didn't mean to be so long-winded. I'm sorry. I just wanted to explain.
Commissioner Russell sent this in case he wasn't able to connect, maybe to
Okay.
read his thoughts or the.
Does
city
anyone on the
attorney.
commission object to my reading Commissioner Russell's thoughts since he's not here? Everybody's good? Okay. Dear Joel Schubert, I wanted to touch base with you prior to the workshop and commission meeting on the 11th of July. I have a flight that morning that should conclude just prior to 11 a.m., which is 4 p.m. Lynn Haven time. Assuming everything goes correctly, there should not be a problem. Otherwise, I may be late calling in for the workshop. In that case, I wanted to make sure my opinion was known at the workshop. After reviewing the applications, interviewing the candidates, and reading the report about the background checks, I have one candidate that has emerged as my first choice for our new city manager. That choice is Michael White. I believe he brings all the necessary requirements necessary for the job and is eager to see the city of Lynn Haven continue on the path that the current city manager has steered it. I also believe that because he is local, he will be more vested in seeing the job done right and much less likely to seek other employment down the road. Sincerely, Dan Russell, Commissioner, Seat 3.
I'll include that as part of the record of the meeting.
So does anyone else have further discussion about any of the candidates? We're not going to call for a motion or any kind of vote or anything like that, but do you have further discussion before I move to the next item that I wanted to bring up in the workshop that we might need to talk about?
Yes, Mayor, if you don't mind, just for clarification, of course, we're not voting in a workshop, but did I understand correctly that Commissioner Russell wouldn't be able to vote during the regular meeting?
That's what I've been advised, and I have a question about that as well.
So clarification?
He can vote during the meeting if he attends by phone and the commission approves it.
Yeah, we would.
I think
I
the
would like to think we
assumption
would.
was that if for some reason technology didn't work out and he couldn't connect. Yeah.
Okay, that was a misconception on my point as well.
No, yeah,
Okay.
so just like any other meeting, if he's able to get through, we can approve and,
Yes, sir.
okay, just
Okay.
clarification. Thank you, Mayor.
And I think that what I misunderstood was the fact that if he's not able to phone in and he's not part of the meeting, that his letter would
Yeah,
not be
right.
enough for
Yeah.
a vote. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of where I was headed with that. Okay, the next, does anybody else, did you want to say anything else, Mr.? Okay. The next thing that I wanted to ask you is this, because Mr. Schubert, and please jump in, because Mr. Schubert is leaving on July the 18th, whoever we should select today, and you know, we've mentioned two names that we highly valued, but we have also written down the one and with only one person writing the other. But if we were to move forward with a vote today, my proposal, and it's not a motion, one of you would have to make the motion, but would be to whoever we select, that we would offer that person, in other words, the mayor and the attorney would have to authorize a contract. And so my proposal would be that if one of you would make a motion to whoever we select, that you would authorize me to negotiate with the attorney, with this person, at the same salary and car allowance that our current city manager is making at this point. We advertised this position for $100,000 to $140,000. Mr. Schubert's salary is approximately $116,000 plus a $450 car allowance, which brings that to about 120, and a phone, which brings that to about 122,000. The reason I'm suggesting that is that if you did that, then I would be able to go forward with this offer on the table so that this person could immediately become the city manager and become an operating member of the city without having to wait a month for us to come back and find out what a negotiated salary would be at the next commission meeting. And then the other side of that, in looking at the salary, Mr. Schubert has shared with me part of some of the draft of the budget. We've been looking at that. In October, he's opening back up to the merit raise and appraisal system with other employees. And and I know many of you agree, we're hoping that in October that we can do some more work with salaries so that some of our employees who are at the low end of the scale can be raised up. I mean, some of our salaries are not even a living wage. And we're seeing more. The salaries are beginning to meld into more of a curve now because we've had longtime employees that have retired and their replacements have been hired at lower salaries, so that we're looking more like a sort of a bell curve now instead of just the slanted line. So my thinking is, if we could offer whoever we decide today to make our new city manager the same salary as Mr. Schubert, then in approximately 90 days, we'll be at October, where we'll be looking at other salaries as well, and if the commission chose to do so, they could offer some sort of incentive raise and bring the salary and the car allowance up. If we offer any amount that's different, then that's going to have to, come for a vote. It's going to have to also, move, you see all the technicalities to that. So anyway, that's just something that I'm putting on the table. Would anyone like to discuss that? And
Well, I know we're going to be talking about the budget here in the upcoming days. I know you don't like salary studies. I do. And
I'm trying to be more open.
I appreciate that. And my concern is who is going to determine what employee A or B receives?
Mr. Schubert has been working on a draft for a personnel manual, which we also will have to read if you haven't already looked. I mean, we don't have to approve that. We may decide that merit raises are not where we want to go. I mean, it hasn't been approved. What I was saying is that I wasn't trying to get off into that particular topic. In October, we're going to be looking at budget, salaries, personnel manual, all those things together, and I was just saying that also comes to about a 90-day period where we could also discuss the city manager and if we're at the right salary. Lynn Haven pays less than City of Panama City and also the City of Panama City Beach, but at the same time, and I mean no offense to any candidate who's maybe made more money. Some of our candidates made much more money than Mr. Schubert currently makes, and some made considerably less. But I would, I guess what I'm trying to say, it would seem almost disingenuous of us to send Mr. Schubert off to a job that's paying slightly more money with slightly more benefits, which is, a raise for him, and then to bring in someone we haven't seen, in our city working and offer them considerably more or less, actually. So my thinking is that it would be a good thing to do to stay at the same salary, the same benefits for now, and then in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, anybody on the commission could bring it up that they think that's not enough or it's too much or whatever, and we could change it. But if we kept it the same, we could hire someone today, and we would have someone who could work with Mr. Schubert and this is assuming that whoever we choose today is able to go to work immediately. They may not be able to go to work immediately for, maybe 2 weeks' notice. It may be, I don't know, what their circumstances would be. So I'm just bringing that up for your consideration and a possible motion during the meeting. Anything else, Ms.?
I agree with the salary. I'm pretty frugal. I would suggest 100,000, but I'd start at the bottom and give him 90 days and then pop him up to 115 or 116. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, anyone else on the commission have anything else you would like to add to this discussion before I wanted to give the public an opportunity if they had any comments they wanted to make about anything about the hiring of the city manager before we close the workshop. Mr. Schubert, would you like to say anything? I didn't give you an opportunity.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Jackson? Okay.
Ma'am.
Okay, before I adjourn the workshop, I do always like to give the public time for input, and also that includes employees. You know, if any of you have anything you'd like to say, anyone in the public who would like to comment about the workshop. Yes, Miss Janet. One moment, I had someone behind you.
Copy of Mr. White's application in front of me, and he left his last position February of this year. And I don't know if I'm reading this correctly in the annual salary that he left. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading it correctly.
$240,000?
You are reading it correctly.
And he's coming to work here for 110 or 115?
If he were selected, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. DeFell was next. Okay, that's fine. Mr. DeFell, you're next. Would you like to speak from your chair? If you will, okay.
No,
okay.
no. Okay. I'm Virgil DeFell, 1009 Colorado Avenue. Mayor, I just had an anniversary. I've been here 27 years in Lynn Haven.
You're a longtime resident.
And seen a lot come and go. And I'm delighted that our commission has moved expeditiously, made a decision, looking forward to our new city manager, and I understand his name is Mr. Michael White.
Well, we have a majority in this workshop who seem to be leaning in that direction, but we've not voted yet, Mr. DeFell.
No,
It'll
but
be in
the
commission
next
meeting.
5 o'clock that he
Yes.
will be officially.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, whoever made those notes, I read them yesterday and I commend everybody who's involved. It's very helpful to have posted this meeting and the 4 o'clock meeting and the 5 o'clock meeting. That's how come I'm here and know as much as I do.
Great.
And it's obvious that we had a compressed time frame. Now, I remember over 3 years ago when we were choosing, and in that case we chose Mr. Schubert. And I'm hopeful that we have a probationary period for a reason. Is that about 3 months normally?
Well, actually, the city manager, you can correct me, Mr. Jackson, but the city manager functions at a different, it's not the same, it's not a 90-day probation. The city manager, from the time that they are chosen by the commission body, we can terminate at any time. It's a very politically precarious position for anyone to take. They can be terminated at any time by a majority.
Yes, with cause.
Actually, with just what the commission, Commissioner Friend says with votes, but
Serve at the will of the commission.
that's a much nicer way of putting it. Thank you.
So is there a set number of months or days?
No, there is not.
The contract is very open then.
And with good reason, because if you think about it, the commission serves the people, and the city manager works at the will of the commission, so therefore the people have a great voice in who the city manager is through the commission and the mayor.
Mr. Phil, I can share with you, I think this is my fourth city manager that I've hired. We normally do a 90-day period. Now, whatever the commission decides tonight, historically, we went 90 days.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you. And
But not required.
And I just want to say that I think Mr. Schubert has filled this position admirably or professionally or any accolades you want to use, and I'm glad that we're not losing him to Bay County and looking forward to working with our new city manager. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Did anyone else, Mr. Walker, I think you had comments.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I too have read the summaries and the resumes, as I did with Mr. Schubert when we first went through him. Just one little, not one question, but one clarification. The city manager can be fired by vote 3. If it's less than 3, then there is a monetary exception that goes into that, 2 and 1. When Mr. Schubert was hired, his contract read 6 months probation, if I remember correctly, and at the end of that 6 months, he was given a $5,000 bonus. One of the concerns I have about the contract is hiring a person at the rate that the person worked 3 years to get to. Normally in hiring, you don't start at the top because there's no other way to go. Can't go any further than the top. Usually you don't go high, you go a little bit and let the person work into it on his probationary period. That is on the contract, the way I was looking at that. And Mr. Schubert was hired under that, and he did. He followed the rules, and he did exactly what he should have done. The resume on Mr. Michael White was kind of sketchy. His work habits were listed mostly as technical, working for, it said CEO of an electric company, et cetera, et cetera. I did not see anything in any of the resumes that had any experience as city managers with Mr. White. He had no government experience. With other applicants, you had extensive city manager qualifications. And when Mr. Schubert was hired, Commissioner Shad was very outspoken about that. He was looking for some government managerial experience. So I did notice that Mr. White did not have a very heavy portfolio in city. The only thing that seems to be very pronounced with this group is he's local.
I would like to respond, and then I'll give the others an opportunity to your comments. The first, concerning the salary, first of all, my reason for bringing up the salary as I did is certainly not holding anyone at this table to that. They could certainly, make any proposal that they wish to do in the form of a motion. 3 years have passed, and in looking at, our cost of living and also as well as the other cities, how the city managers, in other words, if we want to bring in a city manager and keep a city manager, I believe we lost Mr. Schubert due to salary and benefits. And so in order to keep one here, I was hoping, that was where I was coming from. As far as the rest of his contract, the probationary period, as far as I'm concerned, we should just stay with the statute that's, with how the city operates as far as the city manager that he serves or she serves at the pleasure of the commission. However that's handled in the commission meeting tonight, I don't know. That was just my proposal. As far as the fact that Mr. White has not had experience as a city manager or city government or has worked in city government his entire career, I see that as a huge kudo for him, as far as I'm concerned. The fact that someone has not worked for government, instead he's made his way in private, and actually it's a co-op, so it did have, people concerned, and he did work with the board of directors. But the fact that it was not government, I think that sometimes private enterprise, in my opinion, private enterprise and things that are run by boards which serve the pleasure of the people that they operate for in a Gulf, like the co-op, I tend to have more trust in those who work outside of government sometimes. So there we are. I had no experience as a mayor. I was a teacher, for goodness sake, and I've also owned a business and those kinds of things, and others can offer their experience. But
there's nothing wrong with being a teacher.
Nothing wrong with being a teacher. Nothing wrong with it. Teacher, and in fact, everybody who has a career got there through a teacher. I'll say that. But anyway, I see his lack of government experience as a plus. So that's my response. I don't know if anyone else has that.
I understand that, and my comments on the salary are food for thought, just like your comments are food for thought.
And I think Commissioner Tender was on your
look at the other side of the coin, too. I'm a former government employee.
No offense intended.
I sure don't want to have government involved in it. I agree with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schultz. Yes, no offense intended to any government employees. My father was Corps of Army Engineers, so we'll keep going.
Bob Schultz, 509 Pennsylvania Avenue. How many candidates? 7 candidates. 3 got voted, got the job. Okay, if he turns it down, does that mean that one person that voted for the second person gets it? No?
I believe our attorney can correct me, but I believe that sends us back to square one.
Back to square one.
Well, I mean, you all have a lot of flexibility. You could go with the second, you could call a meeting, and I mean, my suggestion would be call a workshop and figure out what y'all want to do.
Does anyone else from the public? Yes, go ahead, sir.
My name is Brad Yunt, 210 Lakeview Terrace. And I've got 2 points that are sort of related that I'd like to make. And the first point is that when you put up a house, and you start collecting tax revenue from that house, you deliver about $1.40 in city services for every dollar that you collect in taxes. In other words, if you keep putting up houses, you're putting yourself further and further in the hole. If you want to run an efficient city government, you need to have a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial. With commercial, if you put up a store or an office building, you collect $1 in taxes, you deliver about 40 cents in services. If you put up a manufacturing plant, if you collect $1 in taxes, you deliver about 10 cents in services. So you can see that a little bit of factory goes a long, long way. Now, what I've seen from attending city commission meetings is a whole lot of housing and not a lot of commerce and not a lot of industry. And just doesn't look like a good direction for us to be going in. The other point that I'd like to make is that in the Gettysburg Address, the point was it would be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Not the developers, but the people.
Thank you. Well said. Anyone else? Okay, at this point, I will close the workshop then. It's about 20 minutes until 5, and then we will have our regularly scheduled commission meeting. So thank you for being here. I hope you'll all stay on for the commission meeting. And this workshop is adjourned.